Well, how about Jordan Binnington? He has put the hockey world on notice in the past couple weeks by showing up when Team Canada needed him most in the Four Nations Faceoff Championship game. He basically won that game for them. He came up huge in overtime. We'll talk about all that. But he adds a pretty big achievement to his resume. But what's next? What can we expect to see from Jordan Binnington, both for the Blues, maybe through the rest of his career? Should the Blues capitalize on his value, which may be higher now than it has been in a while, and seek a trade for Jordan Binnington, or should they hold on to him? Plus, to close it out, we'll talk about with the NHL trade deadline just a week or so away, a week and a half away. What are the best and worst case scenarios for the Blues up until then? We'll get into all that and more today on Note News. What did we tell him, Alec? What did we tell the hockey world? What did we tell the nation of Canada about Jordan Binnington? Um, I this segment of our rundown I have titled Jordan Hemmington slash Winnington slash Goalie Supreme slash the Calamity slash the Oncoming Storm. I mean, there's no end to the list of superlatives that I think we could you know throw on Jordan Binnington's resume here. But I mean, I'll give you a chance to rant for sure. But just for now, like, how about it? Like, what are your general, like, just give me a taste of it. How about Jordan Binnington, man?
How about Jordan Binnington? I mean, you're totally right. Like, we've been saying this, we've been on this train, and it's the catharsis I got, like, scrolling through social media on, like, the night of and the day after of people, like, realizing that this is who he is as a goalie.
Mm-hmm.
And then also for there to be, like, no discussion of Hellebuck losing his team the game, because obviously that's not how this works. How about it? Just a wave of like positive energy and relief washed over me after that Canada win.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a disappointing result for Team USA supporters, of course. It would be great to see USA hockey like take that step, and they kind of did in a way, beating Canada in such a great game earlier on in the tournament. But really, the championship is obviously all that matters. That championship game, and they lost that, which is definitely tough as a fan of USA hockey, of course. But I think Blues fans are some of the lucky few Team USA fans that can still be really, really jazzed up about this, really excited to see this result. Just because, like you said, it happened in such a satisfying way and in such a like vintage Jordan Binnington way. It was just, like you said, cathartic to see all of the support and apologies come out, people saying they were wrong. It's like, yeah, what did we say? Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
he was just electric in overtime. I was watching him jumping out of my seat. Um, Gosh, how about him? He is insane. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, does he have a case for like one of the clutchest goalies ever, or like in recent memory, or something like that? I mean, like, so just look at his resume, right? In 2011, back a while ago, he won the Robertson Cup in the OHL. He played and won the final two games for the Owen Sound Attack, with both games being elimination games. Then, of course, we know what happened in 2019. He won the Stanley Cup, leading the Blues from last in the league to NHL champions. Came up clutch again in the postseason that time, and then this. He won the Four Nations Faceoff. I think what was the metric? He saved 31 of 33 shots on goal, and then obviously was unbeatable in overtime. I mean, can you speak to Jordan Bennington's like clutch gene here? It's honestly like crazy to watch at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like you said, this is something that we've always known about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about like clutches ever, but certainly of like currently playing goaltenders. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that in a big game, it's like what him or Vasilevsky. Honestly, like even
Mhm.
Hellebuck, the best goalie in the world, kind of has a little bit of a blemish on his resume in the playoffs. I just think I think absolutely you're right that this is who he is when the lights turn on is when Binnington sort of activates like to another level. And um, yeah, I mean, watching that game was just so much fun. Like even just the narrative of him like dueling with Hellebuck,
Yeah.
having it be the best goalie in the world,
Yep.
and the one that on our team. I got some pride from that. Also, some St. Louis pride from the Kachucks sort of being the best
Yeah.
players in the world, and more Brady, I think, took the spotlight. But
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we've totally always known that this was in the case. I mean, go back, check the receipts, check our old episodes on the Four Nations or on Jordan Binnington. This has always been the guy that he is. We can talk about regular season frustrations. He still like isn't really bottoming out in a way that other goaltenders across the league have before, a la Darcy Kemper or who did the Avs just trade?
Georgiev.
Georgiev. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Uh, and there's plenty of other examples. And I don't know. I mean, goalies are weird and inconsistent anyways. I mean, even the best goalies today, like Hellebuck is sort of his own case, but Vasilevsky isn't totally playing like Vasilevsky used to anymore.
Hmm.
Bobrovsky is sort of having a late career resurgence and was really good for a while, but never like this good. I don't think like these things come and go, and arguably Jordan Binnington is sort of has definitely fluctuated within a range, but has sort of stayed around that same range. And anyways, I mean, just like truly silencing all the haters. Like you can tell that he feeds off of this energy, and he's is a weird guy for that. But goalies have to be weird. I mean, goalies are all the best goalies are always like weird little guys. And I think Binnington totally fits in that mold. And yeah, I think last thing I'll say is just like there kind of isn't really a case for him in big games. Like there isn't a case against him in big games.
Hmm.
And another big part of that too is that this was the best team in the world, the best players in the world. Canada obviously came out on top, but USA certainly proved their mettle throughout the course of the tournament, especially in
Yeah.
that first Canada game. And I mean, this was, and again, in a game where Binnington allowed 2 goals, got the loss and got blamed for it, but allowed 2 goals.
Hmm.
This was like he has the skill to
Yeah.
hang with anybody, and that's like objective. I don't know. I don't really think you can argue against that at this point.
Yeah, like especially in those big games specifically, like you said. And I think part of what makes it so impressive to me, at least, is he was just like hearing all year about how bad he was, like from fans, from Canadians, his fellow Canadian nationals, and also from people in the media too, like some podcast that I listen to where we're talking about how much of a weakness the goaltending was for Team Canada. And I think when you compare it to a goalie tandem of Hellebuck, Ottinger, and Swayman over at Team USA, yeah, like it doesn't stack up. But he was just hearing for months about how bad he was compared to his peers, and I think it would be really easy for that to shake, any player's confidence, especially a goalie, which is such a mental position. Um, and I think that just speaks to the quality of his play, but also his character, that he didn't let that affect him. And I mean, he showed up.
Mm-hmm.
He really did. And we all know it, but um, I want to pivot to sort of some more speculative topics, I guess. Um, I want to start with the next best on best hockey that we'll see. So this will take place um, a year from now. Well, I guess a little bit less than a year from now. But the Winter Olympics will be in Italy in 2026, and NHL players will be returning to represent their national teams for the first time in a long time, since 20, gosh, what would it have been, 2014? Um, yeah, so it's been a while since we've seen this, and really, I want to ask: Do you think Jordan Bennington will make Canada's Olympic team? I think A. Do you think he'll make it? B. If he does, do you think he'd be like the number one? Do you think he'd be the starter? What are your thoughts there?
um, yeah, I think he definitely would make the team just because I don't really know who else you're putting over him. Like, are we still? I don't know. I guess Logan Thompson is actually having a very good season. I should
Yeah.
give respect there. So
Hmm.
it could depend. You know what? Okay, it could depend, but he'll definitely be at minimum the backup. And
Yeah.
I don't really know off the top of my head if there are any large like Canadian goaltending prospects coming up waiting in the wings. The only one I really know is Yaroslav Askarov, who's expected to be like a top 10 goalie. I don't think there's
Is he
really
Canadian?
no.
Okay.
Um, no.
Uh,
Um, but I do think Binnington will be on the roster.
yeah.
Um, and I think he'll be the starter, but as I said, there's a couple goalies who could have a case to be a bit more stable between now and then, and I think it'll be an interesting decision to make. But I'm
Mhm.
still taking Binnington for the time being, and
Yeah,
that could change, admittedly.
for sure. I think I would too. Like you said, it will definitely depend on the next, you know, several months of performance through the end of this season and the start of the next. But the other four nations Canadian goalies were Sam Montembeault and Aiden Hill, right? And I don't, I don't really see either of those guys taking that away from Binnington. Maybe Montembeault, just because I don't know, he's a few years younger and maybe could hit another level. But Aiden Hill, I don't know. I mean, he's also a few years younger, but I just don't see it with him. Like Montembeau has shown flashes, and especially like earlier on in the season, was really showing some positive signs, and that's why he got the nod here. Stuart Skinner, maybe, but I mean, he's just the reason he wins a lot is because he's on the Oilers and plays with some of the best forwards ever. Um, but yeah, I do have my eye on a Logan Thompson, on a maybe like a Connor Ingram as maybe like a sleeper dark horse kind of pick, but definitely Logan Thompson. I mean, this season in 33 games, he is second in the league in goals saved above expected. I think if they were choosing rosters like day of start of the tournament, he'd probably be the number one guy for Team Canada, or he would have been this go round. But it took a little bit for him to sort of blossom into what he's been this season. And at the point that they made the roster selections, um, that wouldn't have been the right choice. I don't think anyone would have made that choice. Um,
Mhm.
but it doesn't really matter because they won, and Bennington was a big reason for that. So, but anyway, um, thinking ahead, I think Logan Thompson probably is like the number one threat to take that away from Jordan Bennington. So he's one I've definitely got my eye on. But I don't know, like, didn't the Nationals or not not Nationals, the Capitals just lock him up to an extension? Um, it it was more term and more AAV than I was expecting for Logan Thompson, and he's been good. And if he plays like this every season, then he will have deserved that. But I don't know. It looked a little rich for my liking, but he's the one
Mhm.
that I could see taking it away, and it would he would need to keep this up in my eyes. The Capitals are going to make the playoffs. He would need to show that he can, you know, show that he can show up in those big moments. But yeah, I think it'll be an interesting discussion, and will continue to be for the rest of 2025.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Thompson contract I think will probably end up being pretty good. I think he's been at least fine for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And if he is playing better, because he is 28, so again, right in that goalie sweet spot, then 5.85 is what it is
Mhm.
for 6 years is going to be a
Six
steal for
years
sure.
was the
6 years,
thing for me.
yeah, and that could totally fall off. But hey, maybe you can get someone to take a cheap goaltending contract. I don't know. Regardless,
Yeah.
regardless.
It was less the money and more the term that was like a little surprising to me, but yeah, we will see. I want to talk now, focus more on Jordan Binnington here again. Thinking, what can we expect from him? What can we project based on this performance and his career thus far? Let's start like big picture and start to get more specific. But big picture, I've seen some chatter about this on Twitter. Um, I don't know where it's coming from, to be honest, but I did want to ask about it, see if there is a discussion here. I mean, what does Jordan Bennington need to do to get into the Hall of Fame? I don't think he is in today, right? I think he's fantastic. He's a Blues Hall of Famer for sure. I'm thinking NHL Hall of Fame, like an Olympic gold. Would that do it? Would it have to be a Vezina trophy? Would it have to be multiple of either of those things? Like, I'm not saying that I think Jordan Binnington is a Hall of Famer, but like, what would he have to do for the rest of his career? Do you think to get there?
I do think it would take a pretty it would take a pretty significant stabilization of his career.
Yeah.
He's entering the back half of his playing time, so I don't know. I think it would take another significant win, whether it's Olympic gold, whether it's and a significant win that he is a significant part of. It would take at least one more showing of those, if not multiple, which I think he definitely could be capable of.
Hmm.
Maybe another cup and an Olympic gold or two Olympic golds or of something of the sort. I guess by then that would be 9 years out, so he's probably not playing. I don't know. We'll see. I guess Fleury is still. Regardless,
Yeah.
I'm getting too into it. I think it would take at least one more significant win, if not multiple. I think it would take another thing is I think he needs better Vesna love.
Yeah.
You could argue some of that isn't Binnington's fault. I think there were a couple seasons definitely where he didn't receive a lot of voting and probably should have. Like in the bubble year in 2022, had very,
Last
very
year.
solid seasons. Last year for sure. Yeah, didn't receive Vesna votes last year, which is crazy. But he definitely needs more Vesna love, and whether
Yeah.
that's the voters or his reputation or actually deserved, we could sit here and argue all day, but
Yeah.
to make the Hall of Fame, I think you have to be considered one of the greater goalies of your time for a
For
significant
sure.
amount of time, and he's sort of been a good goalie for
Yeah.
a significant amount of time. So I think it would take like a 4 year stretch of top 5 to 10 Vesna finishes at least, and another major accolade on his resume.
Yeah. I think the solution here is to like hypnotize him into thinking that every game he plays is like an elimination game in the playoffs or something like that. And I think he's in.
I think
Um,
he needs to get more crazy. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it would have to be like a gold next year and be a significant reason for that. Plus a Vesna. Um, if he doesn't get like if he doesn't get the gold, it would probably take like a couple of Vesnas or something. I feel like, but it would definitely take some doing and like you said, some stabilization in his performance consistently year to year. Um, I'm not saying I think it'll happen. Just wanted to entertain the thought there. Um, but let's shift now to some more realistic stuff. What do you think we can expect from Jordan Binnington through the rest of this season? I mean, there's been some frustration and understandably so that he can show up like this for Team Canada and the Four Nations, but has been struggling this year, right? Uh, he's not having like a horrible year per se, but he's definitely not having as good a year as he did last year. He ranks 37th currently in the NHL in goals saved above expected with just 2.0. So, I mean, we're not seeing the Jordan Binnington that we saw last year. We haven't seen so far in NHL regular season play the Jordan Binnington that we saw in Four Nations. So, do you think maybe he can? You think maybe this will like flip a switch in his head? What do you think we'll see here from Binnington for the rest of this season?
I would certainly like to say that I think he's going to suddenly put up like a 930 save percentage the rest of the way. Um, Realistically, I think it's tough because I also, the further and further this team gets out of games, I don't know how about in he'll be. But hey, I mean, the early returns do look pretty good. Still definitely making those big saves
Mm-hmm.
in the games so far. And I mean, he's only allowed 3 goals in 2 games. So
Yep,
in a 2 game sample size, looks pretty good. Um, yeah, I think again, all we want is less of those 4 or 5 goal allowed nights
for sure.
that really don't really give your team a chance to win or even play.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've said, so far so good. The stretch that they're entering right now is kind of like manageable compared to what they have been playing. So
Right.
next, after playing the best team in the Western Conference last Saturday, tomorrow night they'll be playing the best team in the Eastern Conference in the NHL in Washington, and then some Western Conference matchups throughout March that are sort of mixed in difficulty. They play the Kings, who are a playoff team, but not necessarily an offensive threat. They're just like always been a defensive
Yeah.
stalwart team.
Mm-hmm.
They play the Ducks, they play the Stars, who are good. They play then some like Central Division matchups that against bad teams in Nashville and Chicago. So they have a chance, and Bennington has a chance to like hunker down and make his name more respected. I don't really know if he's going to be able to like sort of parlay that and turn it around into like Vesna votes unless he
Yeah.
really goes on a crazy stretch. But I'm sort of expecting him to finish above a 900 save percentage. It might be right around 900, but I think that's the benchmark I want to see from Binnington for this season.
Yeah, and it's currently just below that. It's at 899 right now. Um, but yeah, against Colorado in his first game back, he let in one goal on 29 shots, so a 966. And then last night against Seattle, saved 25 of 27 shots. So that's a 926. So I mean, he's definitely going to be working his way back up, and I think he will finish above 900. Like I expect his second half to be better than his first half. Honestly, I think they are still hanging in the playoff race. They're like 5 or something points out right now. Um, I haven't checked it today, but I think that's what it was last I checked. But I mean, while they're still in that range, they're still going to be trying, right? And Jordan Binnington is a guy who has been in a playoff race before. He's a guy who has come through in a playoff race before. And I think if they really are trying, which I expect them to, I think he'll kick it up a notch. Maybe not go on like a insane tear or anything like that, but I expect him to be better to close out the season here. So um, yeah, I agree with your assessment that above a 900 is safe to expect here. I do want to talk about. Do you have anything else like general Bennington talk before we talk about this other more hot button item
I
here?
I can tie it into that.
Okay, cool. So I think we should pivot now to talking about whether or not the Blues should trade Jordan Bennington. Should they capitalize on his stock, which is probably higher than it's been, definitely all season, higher than it's been in a little while, um, and see what kind of return they can get for him. There's been a lot of discussion about this online, and we already have one comment in the chat saying that's something they should do. Before we really get into this, just want to say we're a St. Louis Blues podcast. We go live twice a week. It's been a while since we have been doing that consistently through the Four Nations break, but we're gonna pick up that schedule again. We talk all things Blues, players, prospects, trades, draft, all of it. So if you like that, then definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's the best way to help us out. Like this video. We're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can follow and rate wherever you listen. And we're on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at No News Pod. You can follow along with us there. We post a lot of great stuff and announcements when we go live, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, let's get into this trade discussion here. So Jordan Binnington has obviously raised his stock, right? It's higher than it's been all season. It's maybe higher than it's been in a couple of years, although he had a fantastic year last year. So we might, be only 1 year removed from his stock being high. But I mean, we talked about should they trade him in the offseason. Like that was a discussion that we entertained. We talked about it before the draft. Should they, try to move up in the draft by trading their goalie? Should they try to acquire some center depth or something by trading one half of their excellent goalie tandem? But what do you think now? Do you think they should capitalize on this moment and move him?
I personally would not trade Binnington or rather, okay, I don't think that they will trade Binnington
Yeah.
is the way I want to approach this discussion.
Yeah.
I actually okay, I'm going to revise what I just said. I would definitely consider trading Binnington because I think Joel Hofer is a good starting goaltender. I think Colton Ellis is a good goalie prospect. I think the Blues have shown an ability to develop or locate goaltending talent. So I'm not necessarily worried about it. That being said, I think Binnington's contract is pretty manageable. And also, I just like watching him play for my team. But, I wouldn't necessarily be clinging on to Binnington. But I think that they won't trade Binnington. I think that I think that the main reason that I say so is because I don't think any other NHL team values Jordan Binnington as much as the Blues do.
Yeah.
He is such a huge part of this team's identity and especially their like marketing and everything. All the players rave about him. All of the front office guys rave about him. They say like he's their guy. He's their guy. That doesn't make a trade impossible, but I really think that it makes it unlikely that another team is going to bid up to the expectations of how the Blues have Binnington valued, and I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I think that definitely they probably will be listening to Binnington offers, but I think they're looking for like I don't know a first plus, which is a
Yeah.
lot for someone with a sort of spotty-ish regular season record.
Yeah.
But obviously, if you're trading for Jordan Binnington, you're not trading for his regular season. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I just don't really see it's likely because the Blues have really stuck with Binnington for a long time now. And I just think it makes the most sense that they continue to do so. You can sort of figure out a backup goaltender, whether it be Hofer, Ellis, etc. You could find veteran depth
Yeah.
pieces. Finding a new starter when we don't necessarily know that Hofer's ready for that. The other thing too is that a Binnington trade is definitely a sign that the season is over,
Yeah.
and at that point, it's just hard to get the players to show up to work every day.
Yeah.
So
That's a tank move. It's a full tank move for sure.
totally,
Yeah. I've given my thoughts on this before. Just the idea of them trying to pivot pivot back to being competitive more quickly than they would in a full blown rebuild, right? Um, with that being the concept, right? Like it or not, that is what they're trying to do. And with that being the goal, right? To return to being competitive in just a couple years, or less. Um, with that being the goal, I just don't see them rationalizing a Binnington trade. I think it could be an effective way to, get some futures. It could be an effective way to tank your season and get a high draft pick. But we've talked about this. We don't think that is what will help the Blues right now. Um, you trade Binnington away and Hofer takes over in net. Hofer's not ready to be a number one goalie. Um, so if you keep him in the backup, uh, that backup role, then who's going to take over as your number one? Because who's on the market right now? I mean, there's not like a better option out there. Um, you thrust Joel Hofer into that number one role that could harm his development. Um, Binnington doesn't have that much left on his contract. He's got 2 full seasons after this one. His cap hit is 6 million. I think that's a little much for a lot of teams, uh, at least for Jordan Binnington of the regular season. But the cap is going up, and so maybe it's not. But that's another discussion. But um, I think the harm you would do to the rest of your goalie depth isn't worth making the move. I don't think the return would be worth making the move, and I don't think what it would do to your long term outlook would be worth making that move. Um,
Right. Like
and
it's hard to find a comparable trade here. I think the package is really key to this discussion because his
yeah,
value is definitely very high or is higher than it normally is, but I don't know that it's like as high as we might want to think. You know, trying to find like a comparable goalie trade this offseason, Logan Thompson was traded for 2/3. Are you trading Binnington? Now, Binnington has more of a record than Logan Thompson, but are you trading him for a third and a second? I don't think so. And then there was like, I mean, like the Yaroslav Askarov trade, obviously, like that's a sort of a weird situation because
yeah,
he's a prospect. Then there was also Darcy Kemper got traded for Pierre-Luc Dubois, and that's just sort of a weird situation given PLD's history.
hmm
But also, so that's like acquiring a sort of middling level goalie for middling level forward. Like, I don't really know that helps the team when you're giving up a position that is so hard to replenish, like in this moment.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, for sure. If anyone is watching live, let us know your thoughts in the chat whether or not the Blues should trade Jordan Binnington right now. We have one from Justin saying, trade him for a haul. We need a superstar. I agree. We definitely need a superstar. That's
That would
something
be great.
that we've talked about a lot, Alec. I just don't know that Binnington gets it done. Maybe you can package him
Exactly.
with some other stuff like Braden Shen, or something like that. But at some point, you're just giving away too much. I would, and obviously it takes a lot to get a lot, um, and I understand that. But trading away your number one goalie with the Blues in the position that they're currently in just feels like too big a risk to me. I would rather them spend some money. I'm not convinced that that's what they would do, but you don't have to give up any futures or any players to go spend some money unless you're clearing cap space. But that's something else. The cap is going up. There's going to be space. Um, but yeah, I don't think Jordan Binnington gets it done. Maybe you could pair him with Braden Shen, but then you're getting rid of your number one goalie and your captain and your 2C. It's just I'm not sure that solves your issues. Maybe you could build that back later, but I think that's going to be really tough, right? You know what you have in Braden Shen. He's a solid 2C, and when he's playing on such a successful line with Holloway and Kyrou, like he was a lot during the first half, he's very valuable. You know what you've got. He's your clubhouse leader. He's your captain. With Jordan Binnington, you know what you've got. He's your number one goalie, and he's inconsistent in the regular season, sure, but when you get back to the playoffs, he shows up, and he has a track record of that. Um, I think if you are going to trade him, we can entertain this discussion just a bit. If you are going to trade him, you're probably gonna you're going to need to find someone who's in the playoff mix and needs a goalie, right? I don't think you're offloading his contract to a lower caliber team by any means. You are trying to find someone who's desperate for goaltending and is more or less in the playoff race, right?
I mean,
One
his
that
reputation is a playoff goalie.
For sure, yeah, I do want to talk more about that here in a sec, but I mean, you're looking at maybe the Hurricanes could use a Binnington. I think that makes the most sense to me. And as a Canes enjoyer, if he's going to go anywhere, that's where I want him. They have had some shaky goaltending in the playoffs, right? They have been a fantastic regular season team that just can't get it done in the playoffs. Freddie Anderson and Pyotr Kochetkov, right? Great regular season goalies who just kind of flop. So, maybe that's a match, but I'm not sure how much you're getting back from a team like Carolina. They're pretty stingy. Um, Maybe you could get back Marty Necas. Oh wait, um, Alec, Jordan Binnington for half a season of Mikko Rantanen. Do you do it?
No, I think that might be a little bit doesn't make sense for one or two
Oh,
reasons.
okay, all right. But yeah, I think that's the kind of team you're looking at, right? Like maybe a Leafs or an Oilers, right? Um, but I just don't see a partner out there that has the assets that the Blues would want and would be willing to give those assets up. Um,
Yeah, I think because goalies are so weird and all
yeah,
over the place all the time, trading a goalie just doesn't return the same haul that trading a skater does. I mean, to
yeah,
find like the high end of maybe like of recent goalie trades that you could talk yourself into, maybe Binnington is worth that. This offseason, or sorry, last year at the trade deadline, Jake Allen was traded for a conditional second, depending on games. So a second round pick for Jordan Binnington. The other big one was obviously the Linus Ullmark trade, but Linus Ullmark was just coming off of a Vezina win behind the greatest regular season team of all time.
mhm,
And that one was a little bit more of a package. That was Ullmark for Yunus Korpisalo, who was their starting goaltender at the time, who's now a backup, plus a prospect, plus a first round pick. So if you're trading, who you think is one of the best goalies in the league, you can get a first and then like a backup to, eat some minutes.
yeah.
Um, but I really don't think that Binnington is going to accrue that much interest. Again, I think Binnington for a first is the best that a package could be. And I don't know, John, would you take Binnington for a first, like just straight up?
I don't think that I would. I think it would have to be just a little bit more. I think that first would be valuable, but like I said, I think it just sets this team back too much. The
Yeah.
way I see this happening is you either let him play out the rest of his contract or you trade him at the point where he's just like a half season rental or something like that. You just give it some more time, let Joel Hofer develop a little bit more. I think by
Mm-hmm.
the time that contract's up, Joel Hofer's probably ready to take over or at least take on like a bigger role. Maybe it's a 50-50 split or something. At that point, maybe you can sign a free agent or something like that. Or as Matt in the chat just pointed out, Colton Ellis is having a fantastic year in Springfield. Thanks for pulling those stats for us, Matt. He's 18-7 with a 924 save percentage. I mean, he's tearing it up in Springfield. So maybe he could take over that backup role. I feel comfortable enough in our goalie depth to take over for Binnington when the time comes. But that time, it's not time yet, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a couple years out, maybe a little bit more. I think maybe you're looking to, like I said, deal him when he's a rental, or just kind of just let him play out the rest of his contract. At that point, you can make a decision: are these guys ready to take over? Then maybe you get a rental of your own, or you acquire someone who's like a mid upper mid tier goalie. I don't know, but I just don't think it's time to pull the trigger on moving Binnington yet. I think this team could still make the playoffs next year. Um, and if they do, in the next 2 years, yeah, I see a world absolutely where that's possible. And so when that time comes and they do make the playoffs, Jordan Binnington is who you want. I mean, that's who you want on your team, which brings us to our next point. Unless you
Especially a
have
veteran Binnington.
a veteran, yeah, exactly,
I mean, real quick, actually, I
yeah,
do have a couple things on that.
sure,
First of
sure,
all, yeah, shout out Matt's comment. If you guys get the chance, Springfield is like a super talented roster this
yeah,
season. Their regular season wins like aren't great, but they're like on pace to make their league's playoffs, and like they're like a legit, wagon in the American Hockey League, in my opinion. So that's a fun watch. Also, yeah, I think again, Binnington for a first, like the only package I would maybe accept for a Binnington trade would be a first round pick. But like you said, if we're trading Binnington, it's to a contender, meaning it's a late first round pick. And especially in this draft, there just really isn't that much of a disparity in between. Like a lot of these players in the late first round, they're sort of all dart throws, and so maybe having a second one would help. But I really don't know that it's going to be all that much better when I'm already kind of the mindset that maybe they should trade this year's first round pick anyway to acquire some like superstar talent if we're not going to be able to draft within the top four. Like if we're getting another, I don't know, maybe this is getting a little bit too into off of Binnington, but yeah, I mean, and like you said, his reputation is absolutely a playoff and a big game player, and is totally deserved as such. I mean, obviously we all saw what happened in Four Nations, and you and I think most rational Blues fans have been aware that Binnington is there for the big games, and that has always been a part of his game. And I think NHL GMs, yeah, feel free to disagree with this, but I think NHL GMs are more rational than the average fan online. And so I think they probably already knew that Binnington was that guy in big games. And sure, the Four Nations definitely helps his stock to the general public, but I don't really know that a lot of people's minds have entirely changed on Binnington as a player. And so I really don't think anyone is going to value Binnington more than the St. Louis Blues will. And I think that's good because I think you laid out that timeline really well, that by the time his contract's up, when he's a veteran Binnington, and veteran goalies are a good thing, unlike veteran skaters, because they know how to keep themselves cool, and they know, I perhaps this is a bit rude to say, but being a goalie doesn't require as much athleticism as a lot of other players. A lot of good players play, or a lot of good goalies play late into their careers because that's just how it works. And by that point, you could maybe even dream that the asking price then would be higher than it is now. But regardless, like that's sort of the sweet spot of getting into his play, and yeah. So for all those reasons, I don't think it will happen. I would certainly be listening to it, but I don't think it will happen.
Yeah, I think your biggest and best point is that no one's going to value Bennington as much as the Blues do. So yeah, I think and just on the first round draft pick, I mean maybe I would, but I don't think anyone's willing to give it up for Binnington. I think the
Mm-hmm.
goalies that you see moved for first round draft picks, like a Markstrom or guys like that, when that happens, they're like at the top of their game, performing really well, and are like solid, consensus solid goaltenders, right? And I just don't think because no other teams value Jordan Binnington as much as the Blues do, I don't think they're willing to give that up. So yeah, I think we can maybe leave it there. Because there is one point that we sort of started to get to a little that I think is a really fun discussion. Would you rather have a great regular season goalie who struggles in the playoffs, right? Or one that is inconsistent during the regular season, but when it's time for the playoffs, just, hits another level and is playing like an elite goaltender? Like, who would you rather have, right? The Connor Hellebuck, who is undoubtedly the best goalie in the world, but has struggled in the playoffs for Winnipeg. Whether or not it's his fault entirely, I mean, he has struggled. Like they have yet to find some real success. Or would you rather have the Jordan Binnington, relatively inconsistent but serviceable through the regular season, but in the playoffs is crazy? I mean, what's your lane here? What would you rather take?
I really, the way I think about this is the way that I think about goalies and legacy. And I mean, obviously, I'm going to be biased here, but I absolutely would take Jordan Binnington. I would take the playoff the playoff demon, because that's just so much harder to find. And the reason that I make this case is, think of even the last decade of hockey, like in the 2010s, who are the best goalies you think of? Okay, Carey Hart, Henrik Lundqvist. Those were just two of the best goalies ever. That's sort of, I think, unrelated. They were great in the playoffs, great in the regular season, unrelated to this discussion. But me personally, I think of the elite goalies who went on elite playoff runs. Braden Holtby won a Vezina and had great career playoff stats. Jonathan Quick, I can't remember if he ever won a Vezina or not, but he admittedly was a good regular season goalie, but definitely won the Kings at least one of their cups, and outdueled Henrik Lundqvist to do so. It takes great playoff goalies to win these cups. Pekka Rinne, I would say, was somewhere in the middle between a regular season and a playoff performer. Mine just totally went blank there. And then Ben Bishop, too. Ben Bishop was a really good long-time goalie, especially when it mattered. Like, the way that goalie legacy gets determined is by playoff legacy. And it's not to say that you can just find great regular season goalies, but I don't want to be in a situation like the Winnipeg Jets. I don't want to be, this incredible, unbeatable regular season team, but then every year just get laughed at and brushed aside when it comes time to play in when the games matter, and never make it like to even the conference final. I mean, the Jets have been so like such good contenders for the playoffs for so long and haven't made noise once, and that definitely is not all on Connor Hellebuck. It's not roster construction and everything, all isn't about goaltending. But I mean, look at the teams that have gone on runs. Have they ever had bad goalies? Sure, probably. Colorado when they won the cup is an example I always bring up. But, there are examples, but more often than not, the teams that make it far have a performer in the playoffs. I mean, look at the Vegas Cup win. Like, that was a huge part of them winning the cup that year was the emergence of their young goaltender who showed up when it mattered. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Like, the way I see it is, if you have a serviceable regular season goaltender, right, there are so many other parts of your team that can get you to the playoffs. A solid defense, a solid offense, solid special teams.
Exactly.
You can sort of piece together the rest to get you there. But when you're in the playoffs, bad goaltending can just absolutely sink you. And yeah, I agree with you. I think the playoff performer is really valuable. So you're telling me you would rather have Connor Hellebuck or you'd rather have Jordan Binnington than Connor Hellebuck? Just for all the people out there.
For the audio clip. I like that Jordan Binnington is on my team. I mean, I wouldn't be upset if Hellebuck was on my team, but I like the playoff performer. And yeah, I'm sticking with 50.
Spoken like a true politician, Alec. That was way to get out of that one. Yeah, no, I think I love Benner. Real quick before we pivot to talk general Blues stuff, do you think the Blues should hold on to him for the remainder of his career, or call it a good few years and just sort of let him go at the end of this contract?
I do think that a little bit depends on where his I think he'll get another contract, but I think the length of which will depend on how the rest of this one goes. If it's 2 more seasons of like an 890 or 900 901 save percentage, you could, but I think. And I think we're both sort of expecting him to return more to that like 910 level. And I think in that case, he gets at least, because he's 31 now. He'll be 33 in the off season that he's up for a contract, I believe, 33 to 34. I think he could see another like 2-year deal at least. Or if he like really, if he really turns it up, then maybe it's like 3 or 4. But yeah, I think he gets another contract. And if not, then I don't think they just let him walk. I think that there will be a trade at the end of his career if that they know that they're moving on from Binnington. To go way back to something Peter sent in the chat earlier, I don't think they just let Binnington walk because he does have value regardless, even if it's not like a first round pick. I think he's definitely like, again, you finding the playoff performer is so much harder than the regular season guys. So, but I would expect he gets one more short contract.
Yeah, I think I agree with your assessment there. Nothing much to add. Well, Jordan Binnington is that guy. We said so. We were right. A lot of Blues fans were right. It wasn't just us, but super exciting to see him come up in the big moment and win it for Team Canada, and see a lot of other people eat crow that were wrong about Binnington. So yeah, just shout out Benner. Congrats. And shout out Colton Parayko too. I mean, don't want him to get lost in all this. He played really solid for Team Canada as well. Less obviously so. I mean, obviously your goalie having a performance like Binnington did in that final game is going to stand out, but Colton Parayko did great as well and also earned the win.
And
okay,
can we stop with this narrative of Binnington being like the guy that loses his team games? Like,
yeah, this should can it stop now?
He's the only goalie who gets this kind of treatment. You know, this happens to goalies everywhere.
Yeah, for real. Let's put that to bed. I think with the entire country of Canada like loving this guy now, I think there's a chance we could see that fizzle a little bit. Yeah, I hope so too, because yeah, he is really that guy. Let's talk more general Blue stuff. So the NHL trade deadline is on March 7th. That is next Friday, I think. I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, next Friday. So I believe it's like 5 p.m. or something like that. So that is coming up, right? It snuck up on us here. The Blues are out of a playoff spot, right? As we stand today, they don't hold a Central Division spot. They're nowhere near sniffing that. If they were to make the playoffs somehow, it would have to be the wild card. But as it stands today, the Blues have 60 points. Calgary, holding that second wild card, has 64, so they're 4 points out of it. So they're not out of it by any means. It's just that between them and Calgary are the Utah Hockey Club and Vancouver Canucks, two solid teams who also want it just as bad as the Blues do, and it's going to take some doing for them to get to that spot. We've had this conversation a lot. I'm not so sure the Blues do it anymore. I mean, unless Binnington goes crazy, but still. So between now and March 7th, whether it's on ice play or roster moves, anything like that, what do you think is like? How do you want to start this best and worst case scenario? What do you want to kick it off with here?
I mean, I think a lot of it does sort of hinge on the trade deadline. And honestly, I think the best case scenario, I think there's two best case scenarios. One is that we win every game and win the Stanley Cup. But hey,
it's not a bad best case scenario, Alec.
A more realistic best case scenario. Hey, okay, no, we're not doing that. A more realistic best case scenario, I think a more realistic scenario, to be honest. I guess, okay. Honestly, best case scenario is that the team turns it around and fights for the second wild card and makes the playoffs. If I'm being honest, that's what I would really like to see. I just don't really think that this year's first round draft is going to really raise or lower the ceiling of the future of this Blues team really at all. And I don't really know that getting in the lottery this year matters that much to me. So if I'm being honest, the best case is that if they can make the playoffs and I can watch my team play in the playoffs again, playoff Benner, that'll be guys like Holloway and Broberg who have played, they played last year with Edmonton, but getting a more perhaps extended run because they played really limited minutes. getting neighbors sometime in the playoffs. Perhaps Booch can find another level. So there's so many like things here. Hey, maybe Cam Fowler can steal us a series. But if I'm being honest, like that's what I want to happen. But I really think that that's at this point is like, I don't know, 5% chance, maybe 10%, probably around a 10% chance, which isn't unheard of. But the 90th percentile outcome is that they miss the playoffs. And if they do, what I really want to happen is I want them to do sort of a soft sell. I personally, I think we sort of went into this in our last trade talk episode. I would not trade Braden Shen. I think the return for him is really not going to be amazing either because of that contract is super lengthy. I mean, having Braden Shen until he's going to be 37, you can definitely expect some regression at that point. I just don't know that teams are going to be totally jazzed about taking that on. If you can get a haul, okay, then we'll talk. But I really don't think you can get a haul. And the other part of that too is the center core is just abysmal without Braden Shen playing for this team. It is quite literally Robert Thomas and like nothing else. Like Texier would have to take center minutes. Oscar Sundqvist might have to be our 2C. Like trading Braden Shen is, or maybe they put Buchnevich back at center, and we all saw how that goes. Like trading Braden Shen is a bad future for this team's center core. So I would do a soft sell. I think Radek Faksa is definitely going to be on the move this deadline, and I would totally be cool with that. If you can move Matthew Joseph, I would love to. I don't know that that'll be a possibility, but if you can, then I definitely would. If you can move Oscar Sundqvist, I definitely would. If you can, Torpchenko. And admittedly, I would not move every single player I'm listing right now because then you just don't have enough like players to field the team. But like of these names, I would be looking. And if they can get a Falk deal done, then perhaps now is the time. I really think this offseason is more when we're going to see something happen with the defensive core. But I don't think there's necessarily a rush, and I don't know that Justin Falk is going to be hugely contested after, but if you can, I would do sort of a retool, a soft sell, keep Binnington, keep Shen, keep Kyrou, keep Pareko for sure, and let the kids play beyond that,
as they say. Yeah. I think, I don't have a ton to add here. I mean, I think best case scenario, thinking short term, right? But in the next week and some change, I don't know. Like, I go back and forth on this. Like, there's a part of me that wants the Blues to fight, right, and to get back in this race because it's still within reach for sure. But is fighting for the playoff spot and finishing just short, like, is that more valuable than getting some of these expiring contracts off? I don't think a tank is what I'm saying. Like, I don't think a tank is a good idea at all. I think that sets back the Blues timeline. It's just a bad idea for a lot of reasons. But is just missing the playoffs but being competitive worth more, do you think, than trading away a Justin Falk or some of those bigger contracts who are playing a lot of minutes, right? And it would be tough to fill those minutes for the rest of the season and make the playoffs. But I don't know, like, do you think maybe capitalizing while a team is like in desperate need of some defense to shore up their playoff run, like, do you think moving a Justin Falk or someone else like that is more valuable, or I don't know. I don't know if my mind is made up on this. I'm just sort of thinking out loud. Like, what's your thought here?
I definitely do think offloading contracts should be the priority. I think trades should be the priority. I think regardless, they probably sell. The only difference would be like if you can get a Falk deal done, I think that totally goes through. I really think the only ones that might hinge on that is like Radek Faksa because we just don't have a lot of centers, which I think you could actually is the one piece I'd be the most excited to trade. So I think probably either way they sell if they can then turn around and still like go on a run and not if they only realistically trade like two players, like we'll say Toropchenko and Sundqvist or Toropchenko and Faksa,
Yeah.
then like can you still field a competitive enough team plus a Binnington resurgence plus Thomas and Booch seem to kind of be back in the last couple games?
Mm-hmm.
Can that be enough to wrestle for that second wild card spot from Vancouver or Calgary? I mean, probably not, but again, that would be nice. But yeah, I don't think that comes in the way of them trading off assets.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe best case scenario for me is they move off of one of their expiring contracts, whether it's Radek Faksa or Ryan Suter, and then they're able to trade away a bigger contract, whether it's Justin Falk or Braden Shen or something like that. That to me is sort of best case scenario with the stipulation that they still like are fighting for it, right? I think if you do something like that, it's not an obvious sell giving up on the season. It's just sort of like a future minded move without sacrificing, you know, the current season. Because I mean, is Justin Falk really that valuable for you, right? Like if you move him, is that tanking your chances, significantly? I don't know. Like I don't think so. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that it does. Um, so I think best case scenario for me is they make those moves, but like are still in it and are still fighting and are still competitive. That way you see like you pointed out, you see your Brobergs, your Holloways, your Neighbors, Bolduc, like all those guys get a taste of what a playoff race is like, get a taste of games that matter, but you know you're not sacrificing this retool that you're in. Some people think it should be more of a rebuild, blah 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 blah, all that stuff. Like I think you're not sacrificing your current timeline by putting all your chips in, by going for it a little bit, but you're also not sacrificing it in the other way by trading a couple of these contracts away. So I think that's sort of best case scenario. You get sort of the best of both worlds. I think worst case is they either go full tank, or they buy or something like that that just doesn't make any sense, or they just like stand completely pat. I mean, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Like it wouldn't be worse than some of those other things, but like it would just feel a little directionless. I don't know. Like I don't know if I'd like seeing that, but yeah, just some other thoughts on that. But um, yeah, anything else on any of that stuff?
I don't think so.
Nice. Well, we've got hockey again. We've got
We're back.
some regular season NHL hockey. Well, we still had hockey. We've got NHL hockey. We've got Blues hockey. Four Nations was a lot of fun. Great to see some best on best again. You could tell uh, you could tell that the players had been waiting a long time for it too. I think it was just like way more successful than I expected. I knew it would be good hockey. I knew that the product would be good. I just didn't expect there to be so much attention and like people being all for it and all into it, which was really cool to see. So I think that's a win for hockey, in general. But looking ahead for
Absolutely.
the looking ahead for the Blues, they've got, as Alec pointed out earlier, they're playing the Washington Capitals, in DC tomorrow night, and then their next few games they've got the LA Kings on March 1st, Dallas on March 2nd, the Kings again on the 5th, um, Anaheim on the 7th, and the Kings again on the 8th. So that's like the next couple weeks here leading into the trade deadline, time. So you know, not like world breaking competition necessarily. You've got well, actually, I shouldn't say that. Like the only like subpar team in there is Anaheim. The others are holding a playoff spot, so it is actually going to be maybe a little bit of a rough stretch, but not like it's not like you're playing like this stretch was earlier. It was like Vegas, Dallas, Vancouver, Colorado. Like that was a rougher stretch. I think this is one where we could see them steal some games from some of these contending teams. But we'll be here to to cover it all. We're going to try to pick back up our 2 streams a week schedule. We'll probably be back this weekend, probably on Sunday if I had to guess right now. Although they are playing the Stars, so maybe a Sunday afternoon episode is what you can expect from us next. So yeah, if you want to tune in and keep up with all of that and all the content we're bringing, then subscribe to our YouTube channel. We really appreciate it. Like this video. Those are the best ways to help us out. We're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you want to follow and rate wherever you listen. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at No News Pod. We post a ton of great stuff over there. Graphics, memes, reels, and also announcements for when we're going live. So be sure to check us out on all those platforms and engage with us there as well. They all have comment sections, and we'd love to hear from you. So let us know your thoughts on all this, and we'll be back to talk more Blues hockey, as I said, in just a few days. So we'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in this time. And Alec, how about Jordan Binnington, baby? And let's go Blues.
How about Jordan Binnington? Let's go Blues.